Hello and welcome to the I Must Ask You a Question show. I am Tim Nichols. I'm with 3 Million Percent, and we are so glad that you joined us today. A little bit about 3 Million Percent. We're a peer advisory group where we work with entrepreneurs, business owners, and professionals to learn from their experiences and their challenges and their victories and share that with one another and help each other grow. And we generate new relationships, we generate referrals. So we're in the business of growing one another's business. And speaking of that, I'm going to tell you about Jim Bardwell or let him explain a little bit about how he works with his businesses and how he grows it.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. Yes, I'm Jim Bardwell, and I am the Executive Director for Sales, Marketing, and Education for a company called Fiber Protector America. What is Fiber Protector? Fiber Protector is a high-end textile sealant out of Norway. Very proud of our green Norwegian roots. And the best way to describe what Fiber Protector is, it is the world's most technologically advanced, environmentally friendly protection system.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And today we are going to talk about how to give great feedback. And a lot of times people don't think about this, do they, Jim? We encounter it in our peer advisory groups, and we'll talk a little bit about how businesses can do that through a peer advisory type circumstance or setting. But you were mentioning something before the show about how leaders need to recognize where they are in their setting and apply different aspects of this. Tell us a little bit about that, Jim.
Well, in my business experience, one of the areas I've seen leadership go off track is in the area of giving feedback. And it's unfortunate, but most people find themselves in a leadership position completely by accident. Now, I had the good fortune of serving in the United States Army, and from the moment you go into the Army, you're being trained, you're being prepared for leadership. There's an old joke in basic training. If you've been in 3 days before the guy next to you, you outrank him. Okay. And so you're constantly in this mindset that I am someday going to be a leader. Well, I'm already a leader. The PFC bosses around the privates, and the corporal bosses around the PFCs and the privates, and the sergeant bosses all the way up. But in corporate America, especially in small business, no one is prepared for leadership. And one of the key elements of leadership is giving feedback. Grandma used to say, opinions are like belly buttons. Everybody's got one. Some of them just a little funnier looking than others, right? Well,
that's right.
The weird thing about feedback is I think people make that mistake. They think it's an opinion. And if you're giving feedback from a position of a personal opinion, I think you can get yourself in trouble. And so as we talk about this, I'm going to probably be sharing my experiences with the military and how they taught us the right way to give feedback. And when I say right way, people say, oh, there's not a wrong way and a right way. Well, sometimes, Tim, there is. Sometimes there is a better way to do things, right? And there is a time to point out challenges, and there's a time to point out jobs well done. But feedback is a little different. Feedback is something that was a very finely practiced art in the military. So I'm looking forward to this topic.
Sorry, you cut out on me there a little bit on the end.
All I said is that it was a finely practiced art in the military, so I'm very much looking forward to this topic.
Oh, okay, good. Well, let's take a look at what is great feedback. And by the way, listeners, please, you can begin asking questions and making comments and interacting with us. So feel free to start in anytime you want. But as you do that, we're going to talk about what is great feedback and how we can recognize those situations when we're in that. Now, I come at it from an angle of not so much the employer-employee, but within our peer advisory program. So this was actually brought up as a question within the program as to, we hear some things that probably could be improved upon from some other business owners, and what are the best ways for us to approach speaking into that, and so you almost have to have that credibility, that trust to be able to even be received well, right? And so to receive great feedback, would be something impactful and instructive or constructive that they could implement right away that would either make them act on a certain item or think a certain way. And so what I like to do is make it where it's the one with the challenge who needs the feedback. I want them to self-discover their own solution through a series of questions that I may ask, right? And Jim, I'm excited to hear about what you're saying from the leadership aspect that you've learned, or the leadership training that you've learned from the military. How did y'all view that?
Well, the first thing you have to identify is, they're again, everybody's got an opinion, and sometimes the worst opinion that you can have is what we refer to as an unsolicited one.
Right.
Okay, an unsolicited one. In the scenario you were describing, it sounds as though that person had observed an area for improvement. I don't know that those people necessarily requested feedback. And again, what is feedback? Feedback usually happens when someone is even aware that that's the relationship we're going into. Okay, so how do I even point that out? That was a good question, Tim. How would you point out? How would you make someone even aware that they should be seeking feedback for an area of their business? Well, the military had some fun ways of getting your attention. I never forget, Tim, I was in Fort Benning, Georgia. I had just shown up for Army paratrooper school. That's where the U.S. Army teaches people how to jump out of airplanes in Fort Benning, Georgia, right? And so the very first day we get there, there's these giant 250-foot towers. Now you think 250 feet, that don't sound that tall. Man, 250 feet is tall, okay? It's way up there, right? And they had us all out in the bleachers in that hot Georgia sun, and we was about to all pass out. And so this guy jumps up in front of us and says, gentlemen, we're going to show you how to fall out of an airplane, a parachute, by dragging this guy up this tower and dropping him 250 feet from the ground on a parachute. I thought, well, that's great. That's kind of a neat way to show us, right? So this guy, they hook him up and he goes up to the top and they let him loose. And Tim, that parachute come loose. And that guy fell 250 feet. Woo! And that hot Georgia sun, that ground is red clay, and it hit a big poof of orange smoke. And we all went, ooh, right? We thought, man, we just seen a guy die right in front of us. I'm done. I ain't gonna do this airborne stuff. That's crazy. It ain't worth the whole $110 extra they're giving us a month, right? And so, of course, by sleight of hand, they had switched out the guy with a dummy. Okay. And that instructor looked at us and said, now that I have your attention, who wants to learn how not to do that? Okay. And so I think the best way that you can get someone's attention to an area of their business where they or perhaps have an area for growth is to demonstrate your proficiency in it. Okay, so say someone like your question, someone does not have a business plan, no business plan. They're just running by the seat of their pants, right? Just wake up every morning and say, what we're going to do today? I don't know, Bertha, let's just get out there and figure it out, right? No business plan whatsoever, right? I think what I would do is I would maybe perhaps show the benefit of a business plan. And so showed what a wonderful tool my business plan is for my business, right? And maybe what would happen is afterwards, people would walk up to you and say, hey, I don't have a business plan. You've got one. And you just said it was fantastic, right?
That's right.
And maybe you say, oh, and by the way, before I had my business plan, I couldn't manage my money. I was losing employees. I didn't know where we were going. We didn't have a mission statement. We were just flailing around like a fish out of water, right? Kind of like the parachute thing. Show them the negative first. And then when they say, okay, well, I don't have one. Where am I making a mistake? Where am I going wrong? How do I fix this, right? Boom. Now you have assumed a position of authority, just like you said, Tim. You have assumed a position of recognized authority. My thing was when I was in the military, you had different kinds of leaders. The first kind of leader was the captain looked at somebody and said, "Hey, you're the sergeant, you're in charge." And he pinned a little thing on his collar here. He was the sergeant. He was in charge. So he was at a leadership from assignment. He was assigned the position of leadership.
Right.
But then they had leaders who were natural leaders, Tim, men who just drew men to them. Okay. And every once in a while, you had a great leader. And guess what that was? That was the guy that had the rank, but he also was a natural leader and had great leader characteristics and had paid attention in leadership training courses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
I think that's very, very important. If you want to give good feedback, understand that someone is looking at you and they're assigning a position of authority to you. So like we've said on every one of these calls, it's a responsibility and you should take it seriously and you should do your research and be prepared to give them benefit from that feedback. That's the whole purpose of the feedback, right?
Right.
They got to receive a benefit of it.
Well, and really, we say, what is great feedback? I mean, I think we just kind of hit on why is it important? But I mean, because to me, growth is the intended outcome, right? Growth in some way, form, or fashion. Either stop doing what you're doing or do something better, right? Find an alternative way to do something better. And so, I mean, that's really, that boils down to why is that important? Is that kind of how you see it?
Well, absolutely. And you know, and again, the challenge is, Tim, is that, you know, they don't teach this stuff and they certainly don't teach it in high school.
Right.
Most people that have been to college, I've been to college. I didn't graduate. You know, the military paid for my school, Tim. They paid for me to go to college, and I liked college. I enjoyed college. Now, they had these things happen every day that I really didn't enjoy so much, called classes. And after a while, the government got tired of paying for me to go have a good time and not show up for those classes. But anyway, so I liked college, but they don't teach that in college either. They don't teach true feedback from a leadership standpoint. Now, most people, again, they think feedback is an opinion. They think, well, I got an opinion about that. I can sure tell somebody what they're doing wrong. That's not feedback, at least not in my book, right?
Right.
And
well,
and again,
I mean, is it constructive? I mean, is it the attitude of construction, constructive? I don't even like to call it criticism, because anytime somebody says criticism to me, that wall goes up, right? Yeah. Even with negative words like weakness or something like that, that just makes me build a wall real fast and disconnect from that conversation and move on with my day, because I don't need that kind of negativity in my life, right?
That's
But
right.
when you talk about challenges or opportunities, that gets a little bit different, right? So if we're talking about, if I've got a challenge, and really this is where we get into like what we discuss in these peer advisory groups. These are business owners that they know their technical space well, right? They know how to do what they know how to do. They've been trained to do that. I think Michael Gerber talks about this in the E-Myth book, where a lot of business owners are really good technicians at whatever they went into business to do. Mm-hmm. But there are certain aspects about their business that they have no concept or clue of how to do, you know, and that could be with systems, that could be with administration, that could be with operations, you know, that could be with their leadership, right? And so there's aspects of it, or their sales and marketing, but there's aspects of it that they do have challenges. And one thing we wanted to open up in these peer advisory groups is, where can other business owners who have had positive experiences speak into the challenges of the ones that have not had those experiences yet, right? So we're sharing the challenges, the victories, and the experiences among these business owners. But a lot of times, gosh, because they haven't been trained in what to say or how to say it, just like you were saying earlier, it comes across wrong, or it can come across wrong, right? And so
absolutely, yes,
we actually dealt with this. I think a week or two ago, we had a business owner bring up this question, and that's why I wanted to bring it to light here, where we could go in depth on that. So let's talk about, how do we give great feedback? And by the way, before you go into that, I'd like to ask, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to share or comment with questions, and we'll be glad to answer those here. So Jim, how would you recommend we give great feedback?
Well, like so many things in life, Tim, you don't leave it to chance, and you don't leave it to your natural ability, right? Again, we've talked about this on other calls. Left to our own devices, left to, basically human nature is pretty self-centered and self-serving. I love that saying, oh, so innocent like a newborn baby. Man, newborn babies ain't innocent. They're the most selfless, self-centered, ornery creatures you've never had a child if you think a newborn baby is innocent, right? So
Right.
we have to adjust ourselves to the higher calling of our nature, of our human nature, right? And
Right.
feedback is no different. So the first thing I would say, if you want to give great feedback, tune in to what you're doing. Become present in that moment and realize I need to give this person good, constructive feedback, not criticism, feedback. Okay. First step, get yourself right in the mindset. Then once you get yourself right in the mindset, maybe do a little preparation. Maybe don't try to wing it. Maybe show that person that you care enough about them that you actually have some notes or you've done some research. Maybe it's an area that, you might say you need a business plan. Now, I might not be a business plan writing expert. Maybe I went to a third party and had them do my business plan for me. Maybe I paid like the E-Myth. Maybe I know I'm a good technician, but I'm not a business plan writer. So I sat down with a professional. There's people that make their living writing business plans, right? That's what they do for a living. They better be good at it if that's how they're paying their bills, right? And so
That's right.
maybe we keep going to that because that was the question someone asked or brought up about business plans. Maybe if you went to them with a resource, because if you give feedback, say you go up to somebody and say, man, I don't know if you realize this or not, but every time you walk in a room, your cowboy boots are squeaking. And they're squeaking so loud that I can't hear myself think. I mean, I look around, I think there's an old wagon coming in. I mean, and you give up and you're going to give them feedback about them squeaky cowboy boots. You're distracting everybody. Everybody's trying to have a meeting, right? So maybe that could be feedback. That could be feedback.
Right.
But imagine if someone walked up to you and said, hey, Tim, how you doing? Hey, listen, I've been meaning to get with you and tell you about it. A little something I figured out. So I don't know if you've noticed, but your cowboy boots squeaked. I had a pair of cowboy boots that squeaked. And come to find out what it was one of the nails in the heel on my right foot had gotten a little bit loose. So every time I put my foot down, it made a squeaking noise. I was able to fix that by going to the shoe cobbler on 5th and Main. He fixed that heel, and guess what? Don't squeak no more. Now that's good feedback. I've pointed out a challenge. I've given them a suggestion how to fix it, and even offered an asset, right? Imagine if I looked at you, Tim, said, oh, by the way, I drive right by there every day. Let's go back out to your car. Give me them cowboy boots. I'm going to get them fixed for you. How can you turn that down, And
Right.
and you've turned feedback into a relationship building moment as opposed to a relationship challenging moment.
Right. Right. That's a good way to put it. And I like how you even take something that's non-business oriented and do that. In the peer advisory groups, they actually do pre-work about their own businesses and actually come to the meetings requesting feedback. Okay. Because they're sharing about their business and what they're doing with certain relationship marketing aspects of it. And they're expecting to hear ideas or get questions or even connections as to what they could do. Now, something that I encourage them to do is if it gets to a certain, you can give some feedback that's pretty general in the meetings, but if it gets really direct, let's go back to the whole business plan concept, right? So if you just really saw an opportunity to share into someone, to speak into someone, but you were afraid that it might embarrass them in front of the group, that's when you want to take it to a one-on-one and share that. Now, something that I came up with, now having been a financial advisor for 17 years, I developed this consultative feedback loop where it goes by question, response, question, response, question, response. And what we can do is we can take, here, I'll show it to you. What we can do is we can take a big idea, and we can help them hone that. We can help them hone that into an actionable solution, right? So we can take a challenge and get to an actionable solution by asking questions and let this become their idea so that they take ownership. Now, in my mind, the way this is supposed to be, it's supposed to spiral downward where we're funneling into this specified idea, right? Well, just as it can work that way, you could also take an idea, a detail, a task, or a specific objective, and you could reverse the question response to go back the other way to help them form a larger goal or a bigger idea. Okay. So it works both ways. But this consultative feedback loop is designed where the consultant aspect of this is asking the questions and the respondent is giving responses, not necessarily answers, right? But they will come up with their own answer, which would be the actionable solution they could take. All right. And so I just wanted to share this idea. Jim, looking at this, what do you see in that?
Well, I see the very model that I've already brought up, what I learned in the military. That's exactly how we would, after each mission that you would go out on, your group, your unit. I was on what's called a team, and my team would come back in from a mission, and we would go through this very process. The entire team would sit down in the team room, and we'd go around in a circle. And my area of expertise was communications. I was the radio person. I was a communicator. I did all the, I could do Morse code, and I could use these fancy radios. We would use the ionosphere, believe it or not, to bounce a radio signal all around the planet. And of course, this was early time with satellite. Nowadays, this thing right here can communicate anywhere on the planet. But back then, we were pretty high tech. We had these fancy, what they call them, digital messaging devices, which was essentially a little laptop. And so when we got back after the mission, we would sit down in a room, and each person, they had a certain job they had to do on this mission. And just because I was communications, I would maybe have some observations or some feedback about how the medic did his job, right? The medical sergeant did his job. I might have some feedback or communications about how the weapons person did their job. And listen, it was pretty amazing. Here I was in my early 20s, and I was dealing with men that were very much older than I was, but yet we were considered ourselves professionals, and we consider ourselves open to that constructive, informative feedback. And that's how we got better and better and better at what we did, Tim. And so in your peer advisory groups, I mean, I've got to believe that if someone's taken the step to join a group, in other words, this isn't just some random person on the street, right? They're a member of the group. There is probably some type of financial contribution to be there. I mean, I know your groups are a bargain, right? Just a great deal as far as what it actually does cost, but it does cost something. And not to mention they're giving up their time and their busy day, right? And so they want to be there. They're not there by accident. They didn't just bebop in off the street. And having made that investment, I think that that's something that that would be very important. That group would have a formal way that they would sit down and give feedback to somebody. I would, I tell you, I would love to be in a group where I could go in there and say, "Hey guys, you guys know about my business. You know what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. Does anybody have any suggestions or observations or feedback about how I'm doing things?"
Well, and I've got some really great examples of what I've seen. So it's not even about the marketing per se. I've actually seen one of our business owners bring out their financials to the group and say, "Hey," of course, you really have to trust, you have to have developed these deeper relationships with this group, right? And so it was so neat to watch what I had envisioned come to realization, and make it so effective for them. But this business owner actually brought out their financials to their peer advisory group and said, "Hey, I need to back my personal investment out of this loan and refinance and things like that." And we actually got to see the advice come around because they had commercial bankers, they had commercial real estate people in the group, they had financial advisors, they had people who had even been bank executives in the group in the past. So they actually had some really solid advisors within the group, but they came up with an answer right there on the spot after looking at some numbers. And you talking about some incredible peer advice. You know, where else could you find that, where you had so many advisors in one room that could give you something along those lines? So, you know, the feedback in that type of a atmosphere was crucial, right? And you know, you want to make sure you've got people that you trust in those places before you ask some of those questions. But you know, something I wanted out of that when I started that whole program was I wanted to know if I'm being blindsided by something in the community, maybe by something I'm doing wrong or something I could do better. And I wanted to know from my peers if they were noticing some things or hearing some things that maybe I needed to change.
Mm.
Right. So there's this vulnerability that comes along with it that you have to be willing to accept what that is. And so next week, what I want to discuss is how to receive feedback in a way where you can separate the personal from having your feelings hurt by that, right? So you could take what advice was given and make it an impactful implementation into your business, as opposed to having your feelings hurt and checking out.
Absolutely. So, you know, the biggest challenge is the same thing with everything in our lives, right?
Right.
We've got to understand that we behave the way we were taught to behave. All we do is emulate what we have observed. Okay, that's all a child is. A child is a reflection of its environment. You know, if you go to Walmart and you see a little knothead running through the toy section, ripping open toys and throwing stuff everywhere, don't get mad at him. He is a reflection of his parent, wherever that parent may be, right? And so that's all we are, Tim. So, you know, if you were raised in an environment where you received great feedback and it was a loving, caring, nurturing environment, and you got great feedback, and then you were taught how to receive that feedback and do it, you know, to separate your emotion from it and receive it from a logical standpoint. And we all know that all of us were raised perfectly in that environment, right?
Right.
No, we weren't. Some of us maybe were. Great. If you were, I'm happy for you. I'm elated. But my experience has been the opposite. You know, because again, what are our parents? Our parents are a reflection of their parents, and their parents were a reflection of that. And you don't have to go too many parents back to end up in the Great Depression. And when you're in the Great Depression, all bets was off, right? My grandfather was sold to go work in a business in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, because his parents couldn't feed him. Now, you can dress that up any way you want to. The bottom line is this person gave them some money and he went and lived with them and he worked in their house and their business. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we don't got to go too many generations back to where you're selling kids. Right. And so, I mean, you know, so what kind of upbringing did they have? Right. Did they get constructive criticism? Probably not. Did they get good feedback?
Told what to do.
Yeah. And they didn't understand. They didn't have, what were they emulating? So, what are we emulating? What are we reflecting, right? And so again, unless you've had the benefit of being in a group or an organization where you're taught or where you're modeled how to give good feedback and how to receive it, what makes you think that you would possess that knowledge or skill set? You can't. It's not your fault. right?
That's right.
No one just assumes they know how to do brain surgery because they've seen it on TV a few times. That's not how life works, right? And
That's right.
so, when I was a young guy just starting off in sales, an older salesperson, I think I told this our viewers before, at some point in my life, I sold cars. Well, one of the old timers there, Tim, you know what he did? Great advice. Oh my gosh, I grew so much. He told me to go to the local Toastmasters. And I, as a young man, went to Toastmasters. Now, Tim, I don't know if you've ever been to a Toastmasters meeting.
I have not.
Okay, well, that's their format. You get up and you do these presentations, right? And they give you feedback.
Right.
They sit around in a big room, in a big circle, and they give feedback to you. Okay. And it's pretty amazing. It's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Well, excellent. And that I encourage those to go develop that skill set. And that's one thing I wanted to do with this show and with today's topic, as well as next week's topic, is to help people further develop that. So, in doing that, I'd say as we finish up the show, what I want people to do is feel free to comment or ask questions, even as we move on throughout the week, and check in on the show, and we'll be glad to give you feedback on what questions you have as well. So anyway, Jim, do you have anything else that you'd like to share with us before we go?
Yeah. Again, I encourage everyone to this week, just open your eyes, open your ears, and observe to see if you see someone giving good feedback, or you hear someone giving good feedback. Okay. If you see a video, if you read something and you say, wow, that's really a good way to give feedback. Become a student of life. Become a student of business. And I'm getting up there in years, Tim. Man, whew, September. I'll be 54 years old in September. Man, alive! I remember thinking,
you don't look it, at least, right?
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, this. I got this camera purposely a little defocused. Yeah, it's not. That question that says, "Do you want your camera to be HD?" I always say no HD. I want it to be fuzzy, right? So, I did not gain this knowledge or information about feedback, by accident. It was a skill set that I knew was going to be important. It was a skill set that I had to have in the military. And then when I got out to the business world, I realized how powerful it was, what a great tool it was. And you know what, Tim? Right. If you're good at giving feedback, it actually builds relationships with people. Some people are nervous to give feedback because they think they're going to hamper their relationships or hurt them or become a challenge to them, right?
Right.
It's the opposite. If you give great feedback, this crazy thing starts happening, Tim. People start seeking you out. People start trying to say, man, where's that Bardwell guy? I need some good feedback, right? So it can actually be a skill set that can serve you very well.
Well, and that's why we have such great organic growth within our 3 million% growth groups that are the peer advisory groups, because people are searching for that feedback. They're searching for that peer advice. I mean, this acts like a board of advisors of your peers, of people who have already been through this stuff. And so they can actually speak into something and speak into your challenges before you skin your knees too bad in it, right? You're learning from the mistakes they've already made. And that's right. So that's one thing we want to encourage, though, is how better to explain, maybe from the mistakes you've already made, how better to explain that to someone else without it coming across as arrogant or too brutal or anything like that. We want to make it where it's encouraging and we lift others up and help them avoid the mistakes that you might have made.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to quote my good friend Dale Carnegie, right? how to win friends and influence people, it really does boil down to thinking things through and being prepared to be a benefit to people, to be an asset to people, to be something that they think when they're thinking back over their week, they say, man, I sure am glad I talked to Tim. My whole week of everybody I talked to, man, I got a lot out of that conversation with Tim. That was a great benefit. And so if you're a practitioner of giving good feedback that is useful, feedback that helps someone become better at their job. When I told that story about the military and sitting in a big circle, there was this one particular NCO that gave such amazing feedback. Tim, to this day, when I tell that story, his face comes to my mind. That's how powerful it can be. You can really make an impact in someone's life that they will remember the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and we remember, we might not even remember what they said, but we remember the intent in which it was said.
That's
and
right.
Remember who said it, right?
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, I can't pick, we went through this process dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of times, right? So I can't really probably pinpoint one specific one. It's just he was consistent. He was really, really good at giving feedback. And if you can practice this and you can give good feedback, this crazy thing could end up happening. You could give such good feedback that you might become a consultant. And people might actually pay you. People might actually give you an exchange of value, because technically, what is a coach? What is a consultant? It's a professional feedback giver, And so it really is a good asset, a good tool to become proficient at.
Well, and I hope that the listeners reach out, because actually some of our own 3 Million% members have requested flashcards for good questions to ask. So I'm going to be working towards coming out with that. That sounds like a very positive type thing to help them better ask questions in those moments where they could make an impact.
That's a great idea. Whatever the flashcards, if they want to just put a bunch of great questions into a hat and at every meeting pass it around and pull it out, and you gotta ask someone a question. You know what they're doing? They're practicing. You can't expect to get good at anything without doing it. So if you want to give great feedback, well, guess what? You need to give feedback. You got to start doing it. You got to give it before you can become proficient at it. And if you become proficient at it, then you become good at it. And when you're good at it, the next step is to become great at it, right? And,
that's right.
And if you can become great at it, you can make a living by giving feedback.
That is so right. So true. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And I want you to continue the conversation in the comments, continue to ask questions. Join us next time for our live stream next Monday, August 3rd at 2 p.m. I do apologize. There was some confusion with StreamYard, and they kept changing the time, and I had to keep changing it back. So I do apologize for any confusion today on the time of the call. But anyway, we look forward to having you Monday, August 3rd. Catch us in the comments. Catch us next week. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.